You are watching and listening to Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV on YouTube and your favourite podcasts.
Hi everybody, Jerry Taggart here. Now be sure to watch Chris and Leicester Till I Die TV by subscribing on YouTube and following them on social media for all the latest Leicester City news and information. Come on you foxes!
Back of the net.
You're watching Leicester Till I Die TV.
Watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform or ask your smart speaker to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Subscribe, like, follow, and join in now.
Right, Chris.
All right there, all right at the back. It's been ages since I've seen you. It's been about 45 minutes. I hope you are all well. Thanks for coming back and joining us again. This is the sloppy second show, as I like to call it. Don't tell Julian. Shh. I don't think he heard that. Welcome along. It's Leicester Till I Die. And we are Tuesday at 9 o'clock, which can only mean one thing. It's the X on the Pitch show. And where can you watch and find us and listen to us later? Funny you should ask that.
Watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform
Or ask your smart speaker.
to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Subscribe, like, follow, and join in now.
Spurs may have got the new manager. We're going to stick with the old guard. And why not? It's the Women's Weekly Top Totty Centres Red Special. It's Julian. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Chris. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm running out of women's magazines, though.
I'll send you some over next week.
Yeah. What sort? That's the question. You know? Yeah. First of all, we've got to touch on it, haven't we? Conte to Spurs. We were just mentioning it before we started, but just to bring it up, a surprise when he said no before and he said yes now.
Yeah, and what I read in this sort of press was that he felt too emotional when they first approached him because it was too close to him leaving Milan, and I don't quite get that. But then I wonder if in that period that no one else has approached him, that it seems far more attractive the second time round. I mean, you can't deny that he did well, at Chelsea, but it's a very, very interesting appointment. I think, the team isn't quite performing as it has done for quite a few years since Pochettino left, although it has done in fits and starts, but really need to get something sort of solid. But, you just cannot deny this guy's enthusiasm and the way he goes about his job. And do you know what? I think it's probably exactly what Tottenham needs. So while he wouldn't be my favourite choice for every club, including ours, I think probably perfect fit for the Spurs.
It's probably the best managerial decision they've made in a long time. I mean, the success that Poch brought to the limited success, so we say, that he brought to Spurs, but he was a developing manager. Conte's been there, seen it, got the T-shirt, and it'd be interesting to see how his relationship with Daniel Levy expands as they work together.
Well, I think that's interesting for any manager who joins Tottenham. But I think with Tottenham, Pochettino was great. And he just had that final season where there were all the expectations, the development had been there, the improvement year after year, and it didn't quite work out. But I also think about Ferguson when he had that season when he said he was going to retire And then, it was a disastrous season. He didn't want to retire, and he came back stronger. And I wonder if Poch had done that. And I'm not so sure, but they did go back in for him. So maybe that says a lot about the relationship there. But, Conte's just got that, enthusiasm, that 100% that he's going to wring the best out of every single player in that squad. And I think it'd be particularly interesting to see, what he does and how Harry Kane responds to that. And I think to be fair, Harry Kane will be happy with that appointment. I think, and no disrespect to Nuno, but I don't think he saw him as taking the club to the next step, in which he wanted to leave to go to Man City. So there's all sorts of conundrums that we can think about. But for me, I think it's a good appointment, and it's going to be really interesting now to see, how the next few weeks unfold.
We were going to actually come on to managers afterwards, but we might as well sort of start with the manager question, and that is yes men managers, for want of a better phrase. And got here. This was in the Daily Mail a while ago, and it was written by Martin Samuel, who, in fairness, is a good, well-respected writer, sorry. And he said, oddly, Manchester United seems scared to appoint a manager in the Sir Alex Ferguson mould. Conte would demand the control that Solskjaer does not have, but he should get it. So I've asked the question there, sort of, are managers just glorified yes men answering to the directors of football on behalf of the owners who are too scared, and the owners are too scared to appoint a manager with a voice?
I just think that the position of a manager, it was a strong one a long time ago. It still is at some clubs. And the manager in the old days, he had the say over everything. He probably dictated the wages, the length of contracts. He would have discussed contracts. I discussed my contract with Martin O'Neill, just me and him face to face. That's how it was done in those days. And then I think we've taken a bit of a blueprint from Europe, and I'm not sure it's the right one, where they've been head coaches. And then, I feel now that for English managers who go to a club and then, they're labelled as head coaches, they probably feel a bit disappointed because they've always been, managers, in every step that shape that they've coached in this country. So it is a bit of a mixture of sort of cultures there. And I'm not sure what the best thing is. I mean, I do think these days there's so much money involved in the game that we talk about every week that it probably is left better to, the different people in the club to deal with. But on the other hand, as a manager, you want to know, what the talks are about. Do you think that player's worth that? There's no person in the club got a better idea of what the player should be paid than the manager. And does he get X amount extra than what you think he's worth? And all of a sudden, that can sour a relationship. Or do you think someone should get paid, a little bit more than what the actual people at the club are giving them? So I think it should actually be a collective, and it's not at the moment. And I think you're right with the Ferguson was the boss, and he probably had a big say over everything that happened at the club. And then does that diminish the sort of power of a manager who's deemed a head coach who just stays left to run the coach the football team, but not have any other say? I think it just takes away some responsibility.
I think I just had a thought then. Please, we shouldn't break down today, by the way, in the middle of the show. So fingers crossed that it won't happen again. But if you are any ladies out there that just do like looking at Julian, there is a section of that show where you can enjoy it. Terry, good evening.
If you disappear again, Chris, I'll just answer Terry's question that he's put up there.
Yes, please do. And I'm going to say hello to Ankit, who's a Chelsea fan, Almighty Blues FC channel. Check that out. Good evening, Ankit. I mean, I suppose in this country we are kind of different, because if you look at managers down the lower leagues, you've got the manager has to basically do everything, almost down to sort of cleaning the boots, if you like, and you maybe don't get that abroad. But for a manager, the book stops with you. You're the one that's going to lose your job. Although, let's face it, you get a nice big, Nuno's £5 million better off than he was. But if you've not got those powers to make those decisions, and this is what makes me wonder with Conte, because he isn't going to be a yes man, where Nuno possibly was. And Martin Samuel there was sort of alluding to the fact that probably Ollie is at Manchester.
Yeah, I mean, when and we're all looking at we always look at it from the outside, and we don't really know what's happening indoors. But Ollie doesn't seem to command that presence. Hi, Miss Molina. He doesn't seem to command the presence. I said about it on the pitch last week against Liverpool. He doesn't look like a guy who's in charge of a football team. Conte does. And I think Daniel Levy will know exactly what he's taken on and probably may have to adjust the way he involves himself with managers, knowing that what he's done in the last few years hasn't quite worked for the club. It does need to work for the club. They've produced this fantastic stadium. On the back of that, they've not really done anything on the pitch. So everything's been great off the pitch, nothing on the pitch. And I think at some point he must think, I'm going to have to put myself out there and work, and adjust the way I work with people and allow a bit more of someone like Conte coming in, who, like you've said, he's no shrinking violet. He's going to want a big say in everything. And he's a very passionate man. He's very emotive. His heart's on his sleeve, and he's going to say what he thinks. And it'd be interesting to see how it unfolds. But there's no doubting that he probably can bring success to the club, and it's going to be another interesting, attribute to the Premier League as it stands now, whereas Spurs are struggling a bit at the moment, and you'd think there's going to be a bit of bounce back from this guy coming in.
And do you think, looking at Man United, and this is what Martin Samuel was alluding to more than anything, was that they've not got rid of Ollie because they won't take somebody on who will turn around and say to them, it's not the American way of doing things, is it? It's like, the American owners of sports clubs literally are so hands-on.
Yeah, I think the problem, Ollie, they went and won at Spurs at the weekend, which is always a stay of execution. There's not many clubs sack a manager on the back of a good win against, a supposedly stronger team. If they'd have got beat, this would have been a really interesting week in Manchester for me. And then it's the other side of it is, who do they appoint, at the moment? Yeah. And I think they must be lining candidates up because, I don't think Ollie's the man, but who's that going to be right now? Who's available? Who's fits the profile? And, like you say, who's going to fit into exactly what they want and who they can work with. And that's, always a big part of the equation.
We've heard in the past that sort of managers have had players thrust upon them. There's always rumours about Chelsea and Shevchenko was a Abramovich signing rather than whoever was Chelsea manager at the time, and it could have been anything. Ankit, who's a Chelsea fan, will probably come in and say it. But, I can say I can't imagine having a job where I don't have control over my own destiny.
No, and that's precisely it. And, I've always been a fan of Shevchenko, but he came in, and there was always those rumours at the time, and immediately that soils the relationship between the chairman and the manager. I have to play them. I might not want to play him. He might not fit into the way that I want to play, and that relation dies a death. And if the results are bad on the pitch, the chairman's going to say to you, well, you're not playing him in the right way. And he's going to say, well, I don't really want to play him. And it becomes not a team. You need everybody pushing in the right direction. We talked about it off air previously with, the people who come and director of football who are supposed to come and help the manager. Do they always help the manager? The chairman, the manager, and any coaching staff and any director of football, they've all got to be on the same page, and they've actually also got to get on personally, because any breaks in that relationship are just going to lead to wider cracks, and it's all going to break down eventually, whether it's the manager or whoever else. And I just think they don't really think about that enough. These days. And, it is about those relationships and everyone pushing in the same direction.
A lot of the comments in the chat are that it's going to be a very volatile relationship at Spurs and they don't know how it's going to work. But maybe that's what, for these clubs to be successful, if you want a successful manager, he's going to come in and he's going to say, get out of my room, let me get on with it, and give me the money to... he must have agreed some sort of, deal, because I think this is one of those positions where the manager is bigger than the club. You know, I think Conte, and I read this somewhere today, Conte has done Spurs a favour by taking the job more than Spurs doing Conte a favour by offering it to him.
I think with, where Conte is right now, obviously won the league with Milan, he's done it with Chelsea. He's of good pedigree, as we'd say, of a manager, coming into this league. And Spurs, what were their options really, genuinely? They've talked about Fonseca.
Yeah.
I personally would love to see, and I'd like to see Newcastle take Eddie Howe. But there weren't that many names bandied about or available right at this moment in time. And I think he would have really had the bargaining chip of saying to them, well, we can sit down and talk, but come January, I want to sign him, and him as an absolute minimum. I'll offload him and him and him, and this is how we'll do it. And I'm sure he will put a big shopping list down, and that will have been part of the agreement that they back him in the transfer market, because there's a great squad at Tottenham at the moment, but it's certainly not the best squad in the league, and he will have identified straight away, having what I'm sure he's been watching them all season, as all managers do, got all the lowdown on them, and he will see some areas where he thinks, I want to improve on that, and I need to bring so-and-so in, and he will have players that he knows that will want to come, and it's just a natural thing for a manager to bring in some of his own, players that he's managed before, and that would have definitely been part of the discussions before he became manager.
There's we were talking about sort of Newcastle there, that they're going to have they're after Villarreal, Unai Emery, who didn't do so well in the Premier League, and managers, because and this is the thing with Conte, is that I'm surprised Newcastle didn't go for him, to be honest with you, because he's a proven, winner in the Premier League, where Emery didn't quite manage it with Arsenal. But he's winning everything at Villarreal. It's going to be, but money is a good a draw, isn't it? When you looking at it.
I think with Emery, it's a no-brainer to come to Newcastle, because he's literally going to have a blank checkbook. They've got a lot of money to spend, but it's the same with all these managers. We're saying about now Conte, about what he's done in Europe, and he's a great manager. He's also been sacked in England. Emery's been sacked in England, and yet we're still clamouring for him. And this is the thing. I know a lot of people talk about the merry-go-round, and when does it ever stop? And this is where I would really like to see the younger managers. But the problem is, I say this every week, it's a lot about money, and it's about success, and they want instant success. Who can bring them instant success? Would Frank Lampard do it? I don't know. Probably not. Would Steven Gerrard do it? I think Steven Gerrard is doing a fantastic job at Rangers. He's sort of out of the way, unassuming, just getting on with it. We rarely hear about him because he's in Scotland, but looks to be doing a great job. And, someone like that, but is he big enough for the job? But are these guys good enough for the job as well? That's the question we've got to ask. But as outsiders, we look in and go, oh, yeah, Conte. Oh, yeah, Emery, because they've done this, this and this. But we've got these up-and-coming guys. And again, I mentioned Eddie Howe, who's did a fantastic job at Bournemouth, in every league in the country on a limited budget. It'd be very interesting to see what he could do if he went to a club and had the money to spend and the players to bring in that he wants to bring in to play the style that he wants to play. But it's not going to happen now, and it'll be interesting how it unfolds. But yeah, it looks like Emery for Newcastle, and again another massive character, on the touchlines at a big club, and again it just makes the Premier League more and more exciting.
And he's got something to prove as well. I think with Eddie Howe, because of course I live down in Bournemouth, as you know, and when I came down here, they were minus 17 points in the fourth tier, and Eddie Howe's took them all the way through. I've got the utmost respect for him, but he does like the South Coast, which is why he didn't last long at Burnley. All his family are down here and what have you. So that's the thing that But then, like you say, you're playing for the richest club or managing the richest club in the world. But again, if as a manager going in, and I do think these days that when you accept the job as a manager, I don't think these days you necessarily look at, where are they in the league? What have I got to? Because if you are a failure at the club and they sack you, you still walk off with, a couple of £1 million in your back pocket.
Yeah, and you know, I've said it previous, you know, early about 5 minutes ago, and I've said it on every show. You know, the money really just, you know, gets in the way of everything, because you're absolutely right. You know, Nuno's gone off with a really fat wallet in his back pocket after so many 100 days in the job, and you know, and it's just that easy these days. There's so much money that they can hire someone, fire them, pay them out, hire someone else, pay them out. You know, it's just. It is a bit ridiculous, but that is, you know, what we have generated with the Premier League, and you know, that's the culture of it, and it won't change. And I probably think it's getting, whether worse is the right word, but I think it is in the fact for the managers. In fact, the triggers pulled a lot earlier than it would have been, you know, previously. And now it's just a case of a couple of bad results. Fans aren't happy. Right, Bosch, he's gone. Doesn't matter that we have to pay him out X amount of million, because we've got the money. We'll just go and get someone else. And is that the right person? And then there's the churn of managers. And we were looking at Watford. I mean, what a ridiculous churn of managers there is there. But they can obviously afford to do it. And is it the right thing? I don't think it is. And you like to see clubs keep faith in managers, and hopefully they can turn it around. But, you know, they just want that instant success. And that's the big issue.
And I think, you know, it's the same with players as well. You know, when you've got clubs, say, like Leicester, and I know these clubs, in fairness, are starting to develop their own, you know, the academies and what have you. And I know that's something that the Newcastle owners are looking at. But, you know, you got a club like Leicester where we take a chance on a £29 million Wesley Fofana. Nobody else would necessarily take the chance on him. A couple of seasons in the Premier League, and suddenly everybody wants him. Well, it's not even been that, and we get him for 80 million. I mean, you know, these clubs, if there were businesses, they'd be out of business. You know, there'd be one going out of business every week.
And that's what it's like. It's like they don't feel like they need to do the homework. They'll just buy the finished product. Whereas at Leicester, we're sort of buying something that we can see as a project. We can see the potential in them. We've obviously done our homework, and we bring them in and bring them through. And, you know, like I say, with Fofana, it came through a lot quicker just due to circumstances. But, you know, performed admirably. And if he's fit, he'd be in the first team every week in, week out, because he's been that good. But then all of a sudden, you know, we're looking at people bidding him from like they did Maguire. And listen, you know, as much as we don't want to, every player has got a price. You know, if someone comes in for Fofana, 70+ million, I think you're going to take it. But the good thing about us at Leicester in the homework that we do is we go and pick someone else up, you know, 15 to 30 million, and we bring someone else in who's just as good. And one day, hopefully, we're at that point where, you know, I think we'll be paying a bit more wages, and we'll be a lot bigger club, and maybe in 5 years' time, and we won't be selling these players, and these players will be wanting to actually come to us. But right now, we're in between that space.
We are, but I think there's always clubs, and I get told, you know, accused a lot that, oh, Leicester City, they're a selling club, you know, and well, like you said, if the price is right, you know, Man United has sold Ronaldo because a bigger club in Real Madrid came in for them. And we're not a selling, you know, a selling club is a club that has to sell to survive. And we used to be like that. Now, you know, we used to have to sell a player every season for a good amount to keep going. Where now, yes, we will sell, but only if the price is right. A couple of points here that Scott's made. Put managers and league positions aside. What player would want to go to Spurs when they can get more money at Newcastle? And we touched on this the other week, didn't we? That Newcastle would have to offer more money because, no disrespect to Newcastle, it's a lovely city, but it's not London, you know. And but I think the owners, they do seem to have sensible owners, and I don't think they're just going to go out first season and spend just for the sake of it.
No, but do you know what? I look at the league table now, and really daft as it seems, I think they need to act really, really quickly, because I think the 6 points, you know, off, you know, away from safety. And we all know what this league's like. You can go on a bad run and you could bring a new manager in. I think they need someone in quickly, and I think they need someone to sort of galvanise the team now and get a few results. And then in January, I think they really need to go and get some players in, because there is a danger now that they can get into a position where, and we've seen it before, we're too good to go down, and all of a sudden you go down, and you know, it's that thing of the pressure of having to win games to get out of a bad position, and then you lose, and the pressure just mounts and mounts and mounts. So I do think they're in a a bit of a tricky situation at the moment, and I do think they really need to act quickly, and hopefully they do, because it's a fantastic club and it should be in the Premier League, but there's a bit of a worry about them at the moment.
6 points off safety already. That's a big amount when you're down there, and you're going to bring these players in. They've got to settle in and they've got to assimilate with the colleagues and what have you. It is going to be a tough task. Scott says there, and good evening, Scott. I didn't say that
Scott.
earlier. How the devil are you? Newcastle need the likes of Graham Potter, Eddie Howe, or even a Nigel Pearson. I think Newcastle want a name.
Absolutely, I do.
Yes, yeah.
I agree with 100%, Chris, and I agree with Scott's choices there. Nigel Pearson's been fantastic when he's given the right opportunity. Eddie Howe, I still think he's growing into be a fantastic manager. The last interview I saw him, he said he was going to take a few years out and really get his head down and go over everything that he'd done and learn a bit more about it and come back refreshed. And and I think what a great manager he's going to be someday. And where he's going to finish, we don't know. But you're absolutely right. They will want what we would, a name. It won't be a Gerrard, it won't be a Lampard, it won't be a Pearson. It looks like it's going to be Emery anyway. But if it wasn't him, it would be some big European name, and probably would get away with it and scrape through and stay up, and then the real sort of fun begins. But they really need to do something quickly to get out of the position that they're in at the moment. Yeah.
Whoops, sorry, I pressed the wrong button there. Moving on now, and just before we move on, we'll talk about closer to home and Leicester City. I'm just going to play this and explain, because this all links in very nicely with what we're going to talk about. Every Tuesday, as you will or will not know, depending who's watching, you have a talking point, Tuesday talking point. And there's one fan does it for every club. I do the Leicester City one. It's on the BBC Leicester City homepage, so go and check it out. And I've done it every Tuesday, and today happens to be Tuesday. So, and I'm just going to tell you what a brief, I can keep it brief, rundown of what I said. Let me just bring it up here. The title was, "When Will We Keep a Clean Sheet?" And that is such a big question at the moment. I mean, here we go. We've played 15. We've kept 2 clean sheets, and no disrespect to them, one of those was against Millwall, who not Premier League club. 81 days ago, which was the first game of the season, which was 22% of the year. We're just coming up to a quarter of the year that we haven't kept a clean sheet for. And if Wolves had the shooting boots on that day, we wouldn't have kept a clean sheet then. I'd put a pizza there, which of course we all know Claudio Ranieri went out and bought a pizza, but I think Brendan's going to have to go out and buy them a 3-course meal at this rate. As a defender, what's going wrong?
It's a difficult one. And, for me, success is built on clean sheets. We don't want to be boring. We don't want to sit back and park the bus, but you've got to be solid and, and competitive in that part of the pitch. And at the moment, looking at the weekend's game, it was a bit too easy the way that the goals came about. I think there's been an unsettled defence. I think as we've spoke about a few times, the shape, has that been right? We've gone to the back 3 that we were all talking about that worked so well last season and seems to have worked. And then we've looked at, for me, Sayuncu doesn't look the player he was last year, and that's purely got to be mental, because physically, there's no change about him. Vestergaard's come in, very difficult sometimes to do that, and he's had some dodgy moments that won't help him. And then in the team that there was so much expectation on to do well, and then to not be doing well, and the results not coming, that that feeds around everybody's confidence. And then also you've got the Johnny Evans saga that, is he fit? Is he not going to be fit? And that, I think that's really, really affected the team as a whole. And you do have to look at. I mean, we defend as a team, but you do have to look at that for me this season, because I think, like I say, Vestergaard and Seunchu, not the players that we know they can be, and I'm sure they will be. And Evans, who's been a rock and organises that, which is why I talked about a few weeks ago about should we have brought in Cahill, which I would have think, I wouldn't have wanted him to play with Evans, but as Evans is not fit, I think it would have been perfect one to drop in there and help the guys out. And I feel that's a lot to do with, the lack of clean sheets.
And I mean, a lot of people have said, "Oh, well, we haven't got Fofana and we haven't got JJ, and once they're back, it'll all be amazingly good, and we'll, clean sheets every game." I mean, Fofana, it's going to be January, they say, unless I know he's, JJ's back on the training ground, but even once they're back in the team, we know with Brendan, he doesn't play, give you 90 minutes, he eases you back in. And when you see what happened with Maguire against us, that's probably the better decision. But by that, so we know we're probably looking at February before both of those are back fully fit and up and running and playing 90 minutes every week. By then, we could be out of the title race, we will be out of Europe, out of the 2 cups. Your season's over. But last season, and everybody had, it was bad last season because of the short, off season because of the COVID and what have you. But we had a worse injuries to our back four than we have now, and yet we weren't doing this badly.
No, but I think you go back to that, and while we had the injury problems, Fofana was fit, Seunchu was in good form, and that it's a massive difference that for those 2 players that I've just mentioned, one's now missing and one's, I don't think, in great form. Even the recent games, the game against Man U, I still thought while we won the game, we conceded 2, and I thought Seunchu for one of the goals just didn't really get tight enough. He don't really look like he's on his game, and it's difficult for players that they can get this. This mental sort of pressure that really affects the way that they would normally play, and it makes them play a little bit different. It's happened to me, it's happened to a lot of players, and I feel that's what's happening to Fofana. It'd be nice to see Vestergaard come in and put a few good solid performances in, because we've seen him being a good centre half at Southampton, and like I say, he's come into a team that's not played so well early doors, and I think that might have affected him. But he's come on late in a few games where we've been winning, and maybe that's done his confidence a bit of good. But yeah, he needs to step up to the plate. And Seunchu, whatever it is, if Evans is fit now, it might be a point for me. And I can't see Brendan doing this with the way he's picked his teams, in the last few weeks. But would it be a point of bringing Seunchu out and putting Vestergaard in? I don't know, because for me right now, Seunchu isn't the player he was last year. And do we just change that just to make a point? And Amati, I think, has been doing okay, to be honest with you. So it's just about getting that mix right at the moment, and obviously the lads in front doing the job that we have. And on that, we stumbled on this with Maddison in the hole. Do we sacrifice that and put 3 in the middle of the park and just make us a bit more solid in there? I'm not 100% sure on what that is, but like I say, we defended as an 11, and if we need to make that change with Maddison, that might be something to make, and just make us a bit tighter in the middle of the park, and that would obviously make it easier for the back guys.
I mean, I've said this with Craig in a couple of shows, and I never thought I'd be saying this, but we're looking at Amati being our most consistent defender.
Yeah, he's done well, and I think even times when he's been criticised, again, I've always said it about Fofana, I say it about many players, Luke Thomas, the young lads. And they're not going to have 8 out of 10 every week. Every week they're going to have there's going to be something there where the performance drops off, or they make a couple of mistakes, and that's just their age and the lack of experience. But at the moment, for me, he's performing quite well. He's not making any mistakes. He's doing his job. He's got a bit of pace about him. He seems settled in the team. So he's the one for me that he's actually doing fine out of the and that's expectation of levels of performance, where Seunchu we expect to be up here and he's not quite, and Amati was sort of not expecting much of him, but he's probably outperforming where we think he is. So for me, keep him in. Does the manager have some confidence in Vestergaard to bring him in over Seunchu? I don't know.
You froze then for a minute, and I thought you were going to get your own back on me. You did that on purpose. Yes. Yeah. I'm watching that, and you froze, and I thought, yeah, he's done this on purpose. Brendan made a strange comment that he didn't seem to think that we had a problem with defending corners, but we seem to be conceding quite a few from corners. I mean, we've got, Colo Torre in, he's supposed to be this wonderful defensive coach. What are they doing? I mean, is it that hot? Surely, and I'm not a football. I've never been on a training ground, but you must, as defenders, do you go off in your little group as a defender and practice that sort of thing?
No, but what you do is you practice attacking and defensive set pieces all the time. That's normally a Friday job when you're winding down for the game. On the Saturday, or if it's the weekend, whatever day it is. But the day before is the day where you, in our day, you used to have a bit of a five-a-side at the end of it. But before that, you'd be walking through things. It wouldn't be a physically stressful day. And you'd put attacking set pieces up against the reserves, and you'd go and attack them, and then you change it around and say, this is how we're setting up defensively. This is where he will be. This is who the dangers are. This is who you'll be marking. I think one of the problems these days is, and we see this all the time, is that there's so much grappling and concentration on where the player is and not where the ball is. So, again, I know I keep going back to our day, which is a long time ago, but you literally would put your arm, you'd touch the guy that you were marking. So you'd have your hand on his chest and you knew he was there. So you didn't have to put your arms around him. And these days, they're now looking at the player, got their arms around him. They don't know when the ball's coming in, never mind where it is. Yeah. And then, if they're not set for it, the guy can, you often see it, the guy just stands there and heads it. So we were a bit more, not as tight, but we literally were. So, we knew it, with the pressure on your hand, if it's making a run forward, you'd feel that, and you went with them. And we sort of just challenged a bit more freely. And the game has changed. Again, I go back to, I think, it's coming a lot from Europe, the diving and all that kind of stuff, and the simulation and this thing with the corners that people get away with, and hopefully they're starting to clamp down on it, which they seem to be. But we just used to mark someone, touch them, and make that run with them. If they got a run and you were beat to the head, it was your fault, and it was as simple as that. Now you see three players all looking at each other because someone in the middle of them's jumped up and headed it in, and you think, who's doing what? Are you zonal? Are you marking? Who's doing what job? And it just seems there's no real accountability for it, and it's not the way forward, I don't think.
You mentioned the word there that I've written down here to mention, which was zonal. I mean, is zonal marking bad? I mean, I don't get zonal marking, to be honest with you, because as a defender, and I say, I'm saying this purely from a fan's point of view.
Are you a defender, Chris?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I couldn't. There's nothing guy could defend, I'll tell you. But no, as a defender, I would say to you, right, this is who you're marking. If it's a corner or whatever, you've got to keep on to this guy, and that he's your guy. And if he runs forward, like you just said, you run forward. If he runs back, now if it's zonal, and I say this is your little bit of an area, you don't know which player is going to come into your zone to mark, and I just don't because as a defender, you'll say, right, I'm marking whoever, and you'll know and maybe do a little bit of homework, or the coaches will come and say, right, this is what he does and this is how he runs. If it's zonal, you've got no idea who's coming in.
No, and I think I've got a good example of this as well. So I think zonal probably not right in this day and age where people, I see defenders just holding their hands up when someone's gone past them, or and they don't seem to be accountable. Back in our day, God, we were so accountable for every last mistake you made. And that was it. In our day, it was like, you're marking him for the corners. This is what he does normally. He'll either start there and you go and mark him. And if he scored, it was your fault. And that was it. End of. What I'm going to do to sort of counter that is when I played at Luton, we played with the back three, and there was myself, Marvin Johnson, very experienced guy, and we had a young lad called Gary Doherty who went on to Norwich and then Spurs. And as a back three, we literally stood on the 6-yard box, and I was in the middle of the goal because I was the central one. whoever, Marv was on the left, he did the front post. Dozza was on the back, he did the back post. But what we did as a three is wherever that ball was near our area, we went and attacked it. And you'd find that because it was maybe half and half, that two of us would go and attack it. Now, what I think you find in the modern day game is you get the opposite, where someone's like, oh, that's not quite my ball, and leaves it. And then the other one's like, that's not quite my ball, and leaves it.
Yeah.
And the striker nips in and everyone goes, oh, zonal marking's terrible. I think it really depends on your personnel. We absolutely at Luton, I loved doing that at corners, and we were very, very, we didn't concede many goals at corners, but the three of us really had this thing of, if that ball was, as the fly and you judged it, we were after it. We were all over the box after it, and other players were marking, and it was very successful. I've not seen a lot of success in the last 5 years of teams doing that, and I think it is that, you need that accountability of who's attacking the ball, and I don't think they do it that well these days.
No. Scott, I've seen your question. We'll say that till the end when we do Julian's questions. Just looking here, two things on before we move on to the next point. I'm just looking at Leicester. We've scored 15, but we've conceded 17. We're 11th in the table. Nobody above us has conceded any more than that, although Tottenham and Everton are up there with 11. But below us, you've only really got Villa is 19, Watford is 18, and then you're down to the bottom two of Newcastle and Norwich in the 20s. And that, that is the worrying thing. But Craig, we were talking about this earlier because we were picking the team for the game on Thursday. And Craig said, when did it stop that we had a player on the post, marking the post? Because, you've got your goalkeeper. If the striker or whoever's having a go at goal is good, the best place to put that ball is either towards one post or towards the other, because it means the goalkeeper's got the furthest to go to get it. Should we not still be having players on the post, or when did they stop doing that?
They stopped doing it. It just manager's preference, and the modern game changed, and they wanted more players out there marking. And did they leave more players, out of the box and up front for the attack? And I still agree that I think when I've set teams up, that I would always have someone on that front post area that when the ball went over his head, he would then drop back onto the front post. And I think I would always have someone on the back post. But then it's how many did you get marking and stuff like that? And I think managers, they're just trying to eke out every last advantage they can. But I mean, it's that classic thing on Match of the Day that every time from a corner someone heads it in and it goes in at one of the posts, they say, why didn't they have someone on the post? What happened to that? Just like you've asked, Chris.
Yes.
And yeah, you do wonder why, because if someone does get a free header, the keeper's really got no chance. It's normally so close to him. He's transfixed in the middle of his goal. And he hasn't got much chance. But, this is now down to the modern era and really the manager's preference of how he wants to set his team up.
Yeah, I must admit, I just think if you've got two players on the post, there's a less of an an area for them to shoot at. But let's hope they get it sorted out, and whether it's a pizza or as Scott said, a whiskey, whatever it takes, let's just get in. Maybe take them all down to the 19th hole, Julian, and you can speak to them. Yes. So the last point that we're going to do before we go on to the fans' question is England players and greed. Well, I don't know if you remember the film Wall Street with Michael Douglas, and his character said greed, for the lack of a better word, is good. And England players are embroiled in a dispute with the FA over tax payments for the Europa 2020 final squad. They're expecting £300,000 each for getting to the final, but instead are only going to receive £200,000. Oh dear, my I've got tears falling down my cheek here. How can you just survive on £200,000 for getting to a final? There's rumours. Somebody said that England players actually donate and this is why I was surprised at reading this. They donate their match fees to charity. I
think so. They should, and if it is a dispute over that, I'd find that really, really sad. I mean, there's a lot of great players that have played in recent years before, these guys are playing now who have, graced many a stadium, many a final, and have earned, an absolute fraction, of what these guys are earning now. For me, it was always about pulling the shirt on, and God, to play for England, it should be an absolute honour and a privilege. I don't even know why you need wages to play for England, and especially these days. While we've talked about it many times, the wages that they earn now, probably a bit of a scandal, but we would all accept them if we were all professional footballers these days without even blinking. But do you need to earn any money to play for England? Because if you're playing for England, you're a Premiership footballer. If you're a Premiership footballer, you're on a big number. And I don't, and I'd be chuffed to bits if every England player donated his England, payments to charity, because they certainly don't need them. I don't know how much money they need to earn these days to have a decent lifestyle after football, but they certainly earn enough. So if that report's true, I'd be a bit sad, if I'm honest, because it should be, I'm pulling on that shirt and I'm playing for my country, and it should be an absolute privilege. And does money take that privilege away? I'm not sure.
I was when I first read this, I'm like, I'm going into the Hulk, and then I sit down and think, well, hang on, I worked in sales for all my life virtually, and I know my wage was my wage, but if I got to a certain point or hit my targets, I'd get a bonus. But then my basic wage was lower because of that. And like you said, with the Premier League players, you shouldn't. I don't know whether it's different in sport or whether I'm being unfair, but you should want to get to the final. You should want to lift that trophy. You should want to have that medal.
You should, and you can ask every footballer, myself included, and I'm sure I've heard Alan Shearer say this, is, I wish I'd have had my career 10 years later. There's that many footballers, will say that, and how different our lives would be now if we'd have played 10 years later and had, Alan Shearer had his amazing career. I had a fairly ordinary career, but if my career 10 years later, I would be in a totally different personal situation than I am now. It is that, that influx of money that came in, and, what such a big league and the sponsorship and all that. But, it is how much do you need to earn? And, these guys, they're set for life on, and some of them, they'll be set for life on one contract.
Yeah.
A 3-year deal at Leicester. And, if you've got a decent advisor, you're set for life, and you're going to have a very comfortable life on a 3 or a 4-year contract.
Well, this is what we said about the managers being sacked, aren't they?
Exactly.
Nuno need never work again. He's got 5 million there.
No. I mean, how it's unbelievable to think that you get sacked from a job, and then a few £1 million is going to arrive in your bank account on the next payday. It's, or if they pay overtime, but whatever it is, it's just incredulous, to be honest with you. And so, with the England thing, I love the fact that they got to finals. Thought it was absolutely fantastic. All the country was behind them, but please don't be haggling over 100 grand when it's probably not. It's probably not even a week's wages these days.
Yes, but that said, it apparently is down to the FA. Who were forced to, it says here, to be revealed, Football Association officials, and you can believe this with our FA, can't you, were forced to make an embarrassing adjustment to the way they pay the squad on the advice of the tax authorities. But again, even with that, you say, well, come on, England players. So, the FA come to you and they've made a cock up, and that's, that's the FA and all football bodies for you. But like you say, you should still look at that and go, okay, but I'm still earning this. And I think it was Mika Richards that said about England players donating the money to charity. But then, like I say, I just find it incredulous that they are on a bonus to want to do well, because you all want to do well in your jobs because we earn more money. But as a sportsman, you've surely, if you haven't got that winning mentality anyway, you shouldn't be pulling the boots on.
No, and and I think the captain Henderson epitomises it. He just seems like that real good lad who just wants to win, and he's just enjoying everything he does. And, I'd hope that, he just pulls that England shirt on for the love of pulling it on. And I think he does, by what you see about him and the way he's interviewed. And you'd like to think that everybody was like that. I'd be horrified if I thought someone had some issue with payments, for pulling that shirt on in these times when we've got such an exciting squad, such a difficult squad to get into at the moment. The manager's got a really difficult job for the England, team. And you'd be honoured that you'd actually got selected into that 25 or 20 when it comes down to the, to the actual tournament. So, hopefully it's not the case, but, we do hear these things.
We do. And of course, we don't know. It's all, what we call paper talk. We know what that's like. Moving on then, finally, a couple of questions just to end with on the fans' questions here. I'm going to go back to, first of all, Terry asked his right at the start. I haven't forgotten you, Terry, but I just want to bring Scott's question in first because he asked it most recently. I've just got to find it. That's the problem. It was his comments right here. Julian, question for you. Does Brendan feel that because on a training pitch the team can't score from a free kick or corner, that our defence is doing well?
I'd say no. No, I mean, what they do on a training ground, it's a little bit different. So, and this was classic old school stuff that we'd do set pieces against the reserves. And if you didn't get the set pieces right, you'd stay out on the training ground longer. And if the reserves defended well, the first team would get quite angry and start to clip a few of the reserves and say, "Can you just let us score?" Seriously, I've had this. Can you just let us score? And then we can get off the training pitch. And it's probably changed a lot now since my day. But there is that. So no, he wouldn't think that at all. They will play up against the reserves. They'll do all the set pieces. They'll bring them in. They'll play it against them. Reserves are probably slightly passive, and it'll all look really good. And they'll defend well, and they'll score well. And then hopefully they can emulate that on the pitch at the weekend. But, on the defensive side, obviously we see that's not going too great.
But you would hope if the manager's got any nous about him that you would be able to see that was happening anyway, wouldn't you?
You would, but no, but I mean, it happens. And, I think what the manager will do is look at, obviously they'll be studying the tape from the game. And that will be analysed now so much more than it was in, 20 years ago. That will be replayed over and over again. The team will be sat there watching it. Where were you? Why did you move like this? I mean, I think every last little movement these days is analysed, and it's like, next time you need to do this. Why did you move like that? Why did you get attracted to that? There'll be so much detail in what they do now. But I think more of that comes in probably, videos of actual game time rather than on the training ground.
Quick question from me then, talk about training. Was Martin a hard taskmaster in training? I mean, I'd probably not up there with the Jock Wallace running up the hill thing, but...
No, Martin was really funny. I mean, to be fair, all the training was done by Steve Walford, who was the first team coach. And Martin and John, I've said this many a time, they brought players into the club who fitted in exactly to what we did. And one who's a very good player, who's notable, and who's a great guy, great player, and he just didn't fit into the equation was Graham Fenton, because he was he was prolific at Blackburn. He was a great lad. I got on great with him, so I'm not talking him down now. But I think he clashed a little bit with a gaffer, and that didn't quite work out. But what they did is they brought the players in, and the gaffer was more of a match day person. He didn't really get involved on the training ground. What he did that was hilarious, and I've spoke about it many times, is that in our day, it was all like old school. We'd normally have Wednesdays off if we didn't have a midweek game. So the gaffer would come out at the end on a Tuesday and then just do the running. And he'd literally make it up. And there'd be like some goalposts over there. There'd be a dugout there. There'd be something else over there. And he'd literally say, "Oh, it's a run round there, round there, round there, and back in here." And then he'd just come up with a time and then say go. And we just went at full pace because we were frightened to death that we wouldn't get back in on the time he said. And even he didn't know how long it was going to take us. But we were so petrified of having to do it again and again and again that we just ran around like maniacs. But that was Martin's input wasn't really training ground input. It was match day.
Yes,
and that was when he would really come into his own. You could see what he was like on on the touchline. Very enthusiastic, obviously. Enthusiastic's probably a watered down word.
Yes.
And he really got his messages across to before games. At half time, what was going wrong. He was good at that, and then after the games, the breakdown of it. So that was, for me, his strong points was the game time, not so much the training.
Yeah. And last question from Terry here. Thank you very much, Terry, for the question. In your playing days, there were no female referees. Watching the effect of how today's players don't tend to argue with female refs, would you want to see more of them? You're on your own with this one, Julian.
I think I'd have been passing him my phone number. I think.
I think it's not listening.
No, she's not. She's in the pub, fully enough. But no, I think it's difficult for me because there's a lot of things going on in the world like right now, and I just think for me the best person for the job, it doesn't matter who they are, gender, whatever, the best person for the job. And if there is, female linesmen and referees who are good at the job, and I suppose, the thing for females, and I'm not being sexist, absolutely 100% not, is that it's a very, and it's always been a very, emotive, male dominant environment. If they can come into that environment and control the game, I think, great, get them in. Absolutely. No problem at all. And I think it's a good point that he's made, is that men would feel, are they going to go off at a female linesman like they go off at a male? I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but, are they a bit more conservative or mindful of who they're speaking to? Because I think over time, and again, as the game's developed and got into the Premier League, and I again mentioned money, is that players have got very big in the boots, and they do talk to people in the wrong way. They do talk to refs in the wrong way. They do talk to line, and they get away with it sometimes, and perhaps they shouldn't do. Perhaps refs and linesmen should be tougher and say, I'm not allowing that, and I'm going to book you. I was totally the opposite. I talked to them very nicely all the time, and it must have saved me at least 30 yellow cards, in the fact that in every game I spoke to the referee, well done, mate, great decision. Oh, you missed that one there, never mind. All the time for 90 minutes, spoke to the referee and got away with absolute murder. But these days there is that respect issue, and I hopefully it's not just the fact that it's females refereeing bring in that respect. Just we should the respect for the referee and the officials in general. But for me, if the person's good enough for the job, it doesn't matter who they are, they should get the job.
I totally agree, but I think it is natural that if it is a woman referee or a woman linesman, that you do tend to think, oh, I can't go and invade her personal space or go around. I'm trying to think, and I could be making this up, probably, but was there a game recently, I think, where all the officials were females? It was a Leicester game, and to be quite honest with you, I haven't seen. And in that game, if my memory serves me right, they did very, very good. And
was it the European game?
I think it was.
Was it the European game?
I have a feeling.
I haven't got a problem. They've whoever the official is, male or female, they need to come onto a pitch and realise what they're probably going to have to deal with, and they're going to have to deal with it. And if they deal with it in the right fashion, they make the right. And they're all going to get decisions wrong. I think there's only Kalina I ever remember who got. I don't think he ever got a decision wrong in his entire career. There's no one ever going to follow that. I don't think. But as long as they come in and we know they're going to make mistakes. We know they're not going to see everything. The game is so quick at the moment, even though they've got VAR to help them. But if they come in and know the environment and can it's dealing with the environment. If they can deal with the environment, no problem at all. Best person for the job wins it for me.
Yeah, I did say that was the last question, but Craig, as Craig will, always slips a sloppy one in at the end.
Always last options, Craig.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's what his wife says anyway. But he says here, are players no longer able to make their own decisions on the pitch and react to situation these days because everything is pre-planned to the precise detail?
It's a good question, Craig. I think that there is a lot more structure in how teams play these days. We didn't have that structure 20 years ago. I think there's miles more now, but I still think that, you can't rely on just that structure. All these players have got this individual ability, and that is also part of the makeup of why they're in the team. So we look at Pep, and he's had left backs and right backs that come and play centre mid when they go up, and he's had a false nine, and he's done this and that's all great, and they are following those instructions. But I think they're also in that team because of their ability that they've got. And you can never take that away from a footballer. And that's why they're in the team. That's the difference they're going to make in those one-on-one moments. So, yes, Craig, a lot more structure, but there's still that flair that's needed in the game, or we wouldn't watch it anymore.
Indeed. And both himself and Terry, thank you for
no worries, guys. Thank you.
Julian, as always, thank you so much. I bet you have you got time to get to the pub, meet the missus, and fit one in before last orders? Oh, you don't need to. Well, at least you don't have to crawl home.
No.
If Mohammed can't get to the mountain, as they say. I should never have doubted it, should I, really? I
can't even believe you asked the question, Chris. Blimey.
I know. I'm a fool. I'm a fool to myself. But, Julie, well, I'll let you go and enjoy what looked like a very large glass of wine. And, no, thank you. As always, thank you very much for coming on and doing that. And
no worries, enjoyed it.
See you the same time next week.
Absolutely. Cheers, Chris.
Julian.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Julian.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks to Julian there. Great that he comes on and does that for us every Tuesday. What a star! What a star! And he knows his stuff more than us mere fans. So what have we got coming up next? We have got, he says, briefly moving down this. Indeed, it's the prediction show. Different time last night. Different time tomorrow night. I can't do sloppy seconds in one night. You should know this by now. 8:30 tomorrow night. As you know, it's a bit. We're going to change it around a little bit. Every prediction show, what we were doing was we were having a guest in, and that guest was a fan of another club. And then last week we got Mark Selby, very kindly, the jester from Leicester, world snooker champion and world number 2, very kindly sent his scores in. What we've done, I've been chatting for a few days now. Moving forward from this week on, whenever it's possible, which will hopefully be most weeks, we were going to be doing the prediction league. You've still got me and Brad, unfortunately. You can't get rid of us. But we're going to be joined every week by ex-Fox, another ex-Fox, ex-player, Steve Leinix. So if you remember, if you're of a certain age, and I know Craig is, and I know I am, you will remember him. Chris, have you been on the Irish whiskey or still on the gun? Gin, I think you have been, Scott. I don't know about anybody else. I think you got to don't drink and type. It spills across all the keyboard. It's not good. But no. So every prediction show moving on, we're going to be joined by ex-player Steve Walsh running down the wing, and he'll be running in and getting some good score predictions in. And I'm hopefully welcome Luca popping in just before we pop down. Yeah. Thanks, Luca. You've won one game. Don't get too excited. You know what? Like I say, he's going to be coming every week and doing it with us. The rumours that I got Steve in because he's actually rubbish at predictions. And he will admit himself he's probably not the best. And the fact that the guest was catching me up in second place. No, that's not true. That is not true at all. But get ex-Arsenal players. Why would I want to get ex-Arsenal players? You know, the only decent player you've ever had was an ex-Leicester player, and I've already had him on the chat, Alan Smith. Tomorrow night, 8:30, me and... yeah, okay, Luca. Me and Steve Linux and Brad with the prediction show. Thanks to everybody for tonight. Luca just popping in there, but Scott, Craig, and Terry, great, and thanks for putting your questions up there. I'll be back 8:30 tomorrow night. Remember, if you want to listen to us and catch up with us, you can do. We're all over the podcasts: Amazon, Apple, Google, Anchor, Spotify, Podcast Addict, just to name 6. And if you've got a smart speaker, ask it to play, and you do have to ask it to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die. The smart speaker, just ask it to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die. Thanks very much, guys. 8:30 tomorrow with the prediction show with X-Fox Steve Linux. Good night. Take care. Stay safe.
That's all, folks.
Hello, Matt Elliott here. Be sure to watch Leicester Till I Die TV on YouTube and follow all them social media platforms for all the latest updates and news on Leicester City Football Club.
Watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform
Or ask your smart speaker
to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Subscribe, like, follow, and join in now.